Yes. Yes. This sure is be Louis Nishmas, Mimi Morasi, Esther Michlabas. I am mortified she was Bemet. It's a Dekis.
You both have one?
Okay. So we've had a long break since the last time we met. Before we start with the mimer, I think I'll tell you since a story regarding Spir Saimer. The mimer is talking about the clever person that chooses the king and doesn't choose the ministers, officers, generals. He chooses the king. And the Bible discusses his cleverness. So I'm going to tell you a story now regarding the cleverness of a certain tzaddik from the previous generation, of Yitzchak Elchanan Wasserman, Hashem Yikom Damo. Any of you heard of him? He was the Talmid Muvhak of the Chofetz Chaim. So we've all heard of the Chofetz Chaim, correct? He was his main student, one of his main students. And he had a yeshiva in, I don't remember the name of the city. He was murdered by the Nazis, but matter of fact, there is some type of copy of his Kiddush Hashem speech. If anyone wants to look it up, it's a very powerful speech that was written down by one of the survivors. It burnt down his shul with all the Jews in it. Someone survived and wrote down what he remembered of what he spoke about. Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Hashem Yikom Damo had come to America at the outbreak of the war to collect funds for his yeshiva.
Is the window open?
Yes. It's open, yeah. You don't want it open?
No, we need it open. I need air. I can't stay.
Okay, well, but I gotta at least try to mitigate some of the sound.
So people advised him, don't go back to Europe. Don't go back. So he said, I can't leave my flock without a shepherd. He went back, and he was murdered with the rest of his community, and he gave a Kiddush Hashem speech. But anyway, this was a story about this was before the war. Someone came to his yeshiva, dressed in a kapata, with a long beard, hat. And he wished to have a meeting with him because he wanted to tell the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan, of the importance of learning mathematics in yeshiva. Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan sat down with him, and this person was actually an imposter. He was a member of the Haskalah movement. The Haskalah movement, they call themselves the Haskalah movement, the Enlightenment. They consider themselves to be enlightened people. Just like today, there are people that call themselves progressives. But if anyone follows the news carefully and really knows their agenda, they're anything but progressive. They're regressive. They talk about others as being regressive, but they themselves are really the regressives. So these were Jews that had yeshiva educations, but assimilated into non-Jewish society of Europe, and didn't want these. They wanted to weaken the Torah community and the Torah institutions, just like you have that today, unfortunately, amongst the Jewish people. So this person was a maskil, but he was dressed up as a frum choshev yid, very important-looking rabbi. And he started saying, you have to learn mathematics in the yeshiva. There's a lot of Gemaras that if you don't know mathematics, you can't understand the Gemara. Almost the entire Gemara of Eruvin, which discusses the laws of an Eruv, and all the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, of sanctifying the new moon. Very complex mathematic equations the Rambam brings. It's very hard when we learn the Rambam, it's very hard to really understand it. For me, maybe for you it's not, but It's hard. So after the conversation of Yitzchak Elchanan, Yishem Yikom Damo said, "You're right. I agree with you. We have to learn mathematics in the yeshiva. Now all I have to do is find a good math teacher." So Damascus, me, I'm good. I'm an excellent math teacher. He said, "Yes, you know math very well." He said, "Very well." He said, "Well, I never hire in my yeshiva any teachers without giving them a test on their knowledge. So I'm going to ask you one math question, and if you know the answer, you have the job." He said, "Go right ahead." He said, "Do you know how to add?" I said, "Adding is very simple." He says, "Okay, tell me then, what day today is Sfirat HaOmer?" And he didn't know. Obviously, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan knew who he was dealing with. He said, "Out." So, talking about a clever person, that was a clever, I found, very clever response I thought when I heard that story. So just to summarize in a very short manner what we said up till now, we brought a Midrash where the Midrash says that there was a king and then there were ministers, governors, officers, and certain people chose the governors and ministers and officers, but there was a clever person amongst them, and he chose the king. And at first, Rabbi explained that he first of all explained the Midrash is a mashal, and the nimshal could be understood in a lot of ways. And the Maimer pretty much discusses the nimshal first in a very straightforward manner, and then every chapter goes deeper and deeper and deeper into what is the Midrash really trying to tell us, and what is the true cleverness of the person. In every chapter, the description of the nimshal and the description of the cleverness of the person changes. It gets deeper. So in the beginning, the Rebbe said that there are those who make an error, and they think that even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in such a manner that there are forces that appear to our intellect and to our eyes, that these forces have an effect on parnasa, on things like, for example, the sun and the moon. There are vegetables that grow according to the power of the sun, and there are vegetables that the moon gives it its power to grow. And the Gentiles made an error. It's brought in the Rambam, the whole history. Everyone should take a look in the first chapter of Avodah Zarah. No, it's not. Yes, they made it. This was before the giving of the Torah. That initially Adam Arishon understood you have to serve Hashem and Hashem only. HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Adam Arishon the 6 laws. The 7th was added after the flood to the Bnei Noach. That's why we call it the 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach. There were 6 beforehand. Hashem added after the flood that it was permitted to eat the flesh of animals, which was previously prohibited. I'm not so sure that the people of the time kept that, because, they were kidnappers, they were robbers. Highly unlikely that they, were very pious when it came to killing animals. They didn't care about killing people. So
why was that name?
But you know what? That could be wrong. We know that the Germans, they had an animal protection society. They were very, in the Nazi era, there were a lot of laws, the big fines, maybe even prison time for people that mistreated animals. But, when it came to, so when it came to people, especially the Jewish people and other groups of people that they felt were inferior, they didn't consider us as people. Just like today, our enemies don't consider us as people, and they call us all kind of pigs and monkeys, and kill a pig and a monkey. It's not such a big deal.
So, what's the definition of a ma'amar?
A ma'amar, a discourse, a Hasidic discourse that one of the Rebbeim say, And as opposed to a Sikha, which is in a Fabrengen, and the Rebbe, and also the previous Rebbe, what do we have? Also, all the Rebbeim said Sichot. They're written down. They're short, relative to the Mimer. They're short talks that are written down.
An analysis?
What is a Sikha? It's a short talk, a Devar Torah.
An analysis.
A discourse. A discourse is it's a Hasidic discourse on a particular subject that goes into depth to try to help us be able to, all that we're learning is to help us to relate to Hashem, to relate to who we are, our neshamas, to relate to another Jew properly, to relate to the world properly, to understand how we have to act, to put us in the right path.
Focus this on relationship.
Relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, with the Jewish people, yes. The intellectual endeavor that's required is very important. It's learning Torah, it's a big mitzvah, but the intellectual endeavor has to be translated into action, that a person has to take the ideas that he learns and try to incorporate it into his behavior, into his life. So the Gentiles, at the time of Enosh, they started making a mistake and started worshiping constellations, the sun, the moon, the stars, because they saw that the sun gives produce. And they made a mistake, that they thought that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to thank the sun. Just like you give a waiter a tip. You go to a restaurant, you give a waiter a tip because you think the waiter is doing something for you, and the waiter is doing something for you, or so you give him a tip if he gives good service. But the sun, their mistake was, the Rebbe says, two mistakes actually. One was that they thought this was Hashem's will, which it wasn't Hashem's will. Hashem didn't want people ever to worship the forces that he created, only to worship him. Like it says in the Ten Commandments, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. You have left no other gods before me. And that's one of the 7 mitzvahs B'nai Noach, also not to worship idols, not to worship any forces other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So initially they started...
Not to worship nature.
Not to worship nature, right? That's a force, the forces of nature. Gravity, nuclear force, electromagnetic force.
Page do you want?
Huh? We're not really on any page, but we're going to be starting on page in a few minutes. I don't know, 204, I think. So the clever person realizes that these forces don't have any free choice, and they're merely like an axe in the hand of the woodchopper. That was the first description of the cleverness of the clever person that said, I will choose the king. In the Nimshal, in the parable, there was a king, and then there were the ministers, governors, and the metaphor is that the ministers and governors, those are the forces that the king gives over. He delegates power to these forces in order that they should serve as powerful forces that cause vegetables to grow. But the clever person realizes that even though they may be forces, they're not actually intermediaries. They don't have any free choice. They don't have any power to actually do anything. Everything that they're doing is only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling them do. It's only the axe in the hand of the chopper. That was the first description of the cleverness of the clever person. And then the Rebbe said that the people then, their error to think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to thank the forces that through them comes blessing, right? Like the sun and the moon. They even made a worse error, that they forgot about Hashem altogether. Yeah. And then the Rebbe said that really even the Gentiles, they don't they don't really serve the sun and the moon or other intermediaries because of an intellectual error, and the Jews know the truth that it's all like a axe in the hand of the chopper. The primary reason the Gentiles serve into intermediaries, and in intermediaries we have to understand that back then when we talked about people serving the sun and the moon and the stars, so way back then people related to it. Today we don't relate to it too much because we don't really know people that do that. Maybe we hear that, in Asia, in the East, they still worship idols. They actually do those things, but it's like far from our existence. So we have to realize that when we talk about intermediaries, we're not just talking about the sun, the moon, and the stars. We're talking about other forces too that people consider to have power. Like, yes?
Oh, I was just thinking now, it wasn't a way of life, though. They just called upon those gods as a means. Wasn't like, when the gods weren't telling him what to do.
Say it again, the guards weren't telling them?
The sun and the moon were telling people.
Well, they felt that by doing that, they would be ingratiating themselves? Ingratiating themselves with these powers, and they felt that these powers then they had choice to be able, you're ingratiating yourself with me, I'll give you more.
These words.
It's a belief.
What?
What is words? An atheist? From עובד הלוי.
Well, the Oved, according to the mimer over here, the Ovdei Elohim, the idol worshippers, they still believe in Hashem. They call Hashem Elokah de Elokaya. They just feel either that he gave it over to the intermediaries,
So an atheist is
and therefore we have to serve the intermediaries, or he azavat olam. That's even he left it over. He delegated. He doesn't get involved anymore at all. But he's still there.
so an atheist is words. No,
I guess. I guess so. I don't know.
but we do.
What do you think?
Yes, but we do blame the עובד הלוי. We don't blame an atheist.
Blame him for what?
In general, I'm saying in general.
I remember one of the first things I ever learned was there's no bread without the baker.
So what do you want to mean by this?
If you see bread, you understand. There's a self-understood. There's a baker. It doesn't really require too much, an IQ of 200 or something like that. I mean, and bread is, what is it, 2-3 ingredients? If it's matzah, it's only 2. But yeah, even if it's bread, you add a little yeast, right? 3 ingredients, a little salt, 4 ingredients, maybe a teaspoon of sugar, 5. Right? It's a very simple recipe to make bread.
If we woke up one morning and said, I just came up with a very complicated 10-step process to take those weeds in the backyard and make bread out of them. Somebody thought of it.
Yeah. Hashem created the world. A lot of stuff was growing. Man's made some major discoveries. The question is, though, the question is what they eat until they figured it out. Fruits and vegetables, I guess. I know. Man's made some amazing discoveries. Hashem has given us the raw materials, right? And he says, here's a beautiful world, make good use of it. Try to keep it beautiful and pristine, like I gave it to you. But, people used to drink from rivers and lakes. That's where they got their water from. It wasn't, polluted. Nowadays, it's a different story. Anyhow, so I don't know, Yaakov Meir. Atheists are. I once heard. I don't know if it's a true story or a joke about an atheist that took the state or the county to court, and his argument was that it's unfair that all the religions have holidays, but the atheists don't have any holiday. You have to make a special holiday for the atheists. You heard the story? So the judge said, no, you're wrong. The atheists do have a holiday. He said, what holiday is that? He said, April 1st. April Fool's Day, that's your holiday. And he quoted a pasuk. The judge quoted a pasuk in English of something like, that people who don't believe in the Creator are fools because you can't have bread without a baker. And when you look at, the complexity of things, the world Hashem made is very, very. You go into it and you start like learning about. Wow, is it complex? The DNA of a person, wow, it's amazing, unbelievably complex. So if there's no bread without a baker, there's no creator without such a complex and brilliantly designed world. So I don't know, atheists. It's kind of I don't know where they actually start with. I don't know, how do they deal with that and answering that simple question.
Very often, the atheists are much more intelligent. I'm not speaking of Jews in general, but the atheists are much more intelligent than some religious people in the other world. So I disagree. Again, to say that you are an atheist, you are stupid.
Well, I didn't say stupid. I said foolish.
Okay, what's the difference?
Okay.
Okay. Let's leave it out.
All right. I don't know how anyone could, actually. I'm an insurance agent, and one of the insurance companies that I worked with had a manager who I always used to talk. The managers always used to talk me in, and I always used to try to, start off with a Dvar Torah and, say how wonderful it is to be a Yid and to live in Eretz Yisrael. And this guy was an atheist. He was an atheist. Really, he said, I am not interested. It was actually, the previous manager was the same company, also was an atheist. His name was Nir. And I said to him, were you in the army? He said, yeah, he was a pilot. I said, did you see any action? He said, yeah, it was in the Lebanese war. I said, tell me, Nir. I said, well, you were an atheist when the missiles were coming at your plane? He said, oh, no, I prayed. Like they say, there's no atheist in foxholes. But this guy was not a pilot. I'm not going to say his name. He was not a pilot, and he was an atheist. And I told him this. I didn't say the bread story. I said the story of the watch. The story of the watch. It's the same thing. The watch. You have a watch. If a guy finds a watch on an island, what are you going to say? It all came together over billions of years, randomly. No, obviously someone made the watch. He didn't have an answer to that. He was like,
There's some atheists, they intellectually communist excluded. And those are just looking to get around it. Because
well,
one thing or what.
so the Rebbe said, just to get back to the Mimer, that in the second chapter, third or fourth chapter maybe, but the second idea of the cleverness of the person is not that the Gentiles don't believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. It's just that the main reason the Gentiles serve the intermediaries, and in this sense, again, we got off the subject a little bit, the intermediaries means all the forces that we see, that we think and look like they have a certain amount of power and over our lives. Like, let's say someone goes and he wants to buy a house. He found a house and he has enough for a down payment and he needs to get a mortgage. And now he needs to go to the bank and go have a meeting with the bank manager and apply for a mortgage. So he could make a mistake and think that the bank manager is the one who's going to decide his fate. But according to the Mimer, according to the true Torah outlook, the bank manager is also like an axe in the hand of the chopper. And all the flow of blessing that's going to come to him is going to come to him. However Hashem wants it to come, it'll come. And however much Hashem wants to come, it will come. And he just has to make himself a fitting vessel for the blessing. To make yourself a fitting vessel, like we said many, many times, you act honestly, nicely, learn Torah, keep mitzvahs, and Hashem will then pour the blessings as best Rabbi Hashem will see it. In a revealed manner, we'll see the blessings in a revealed manner. For all the Jews, that's right. So the Rebbe says over here that the reason they serve the intermediaries, and that could be the bank manager again. We don't have so much experience with the actual idol worshippers who bow down to idols.
You like some water?
I have, thank you. All right, you need a refill, thanks. Thank you very much. But we do have experience with people that think, oh yeah, the bank manager or whatever other, the president. There was once a mashpia in Chabad. I don't know his name, but I heard the story many, many years ago. And he was he was an oved, which meant his life was focused on serving Hashem. And one day, he came into the yeshiva, and he said, who won the election? Who's the new president of the United States? So they told him. Thank you very much. They told him. And then they asked him, what do you care? Like, he says, when I say the brachas in the morning, and when I say the bracha, and I thank Hashem that he didn't make me a Gentile, I have to know who I'm referring to, that I'm not going to be even like him. Even the most powerful person in the world back then, now what the certain American presidents have done to make America a joke and a laughing stock in the eyes of the world. I don't know how powerful they are anymore, but still have a pretty strong army behind them if they ever, got it together and acted normally. So the reason that the Gentiles give honor to these intermediaries, extra honor like, I need you. I need you to give me the loan. So I'm not just going to be a nice person like I always am. I'm going to be extra nice to you. I'm even going to be mitchanef. Anyone? Translation? Mitchanef? When someone, that's not a bribe, but someone acts in a way that overly trying to, got the translation over there?
Now I have to translate from Italy to the...
Oh, overly tries to supplicate the person. There's a word in English, I forget what it is. So that's a type of giving them the authority that they don't deserve. If they're
servant?
No. If they're an axe in the hands of the chopper, right? So here we're talking about a human being. You're sitting across the desk from the bank manager. You're feeling, you have to be the nice person that you always are, but you have to realize he's just an intermediary that Hashem is going to give the blessing to me through. But if Hashem wants me to get the loan, I'll get the loan. Well, it has nothing to do with him. If Hashem doesn't want me to get the loan, I'm not going to get the loan. It has nothing to do with him. He's merely an axe in the hands of the chopper, and therefore, it also affects us in our private avodas. Hashem, yes.
One should not bribe the judge.
Right.
Bribe. If you bribe a judge, what is the result?
You distort the vision of truth.
So what will be the power?
That he won't give an honest verdict.
Okay. But if he gives a not honest judgment, it's God's will.
Okay, but that's after the fact. You're not allowed to do it. After the fact, whatever happens, we say it's Hashem's will, right? Or whatever. That's a part of our belief.
You can't complain about it.
So the Rebbe says that, and regarding our avodas Hashem, when we realize this and when we internalize this idea, so then we also won't make a calculation when it comes to giving tzedakah properly. Sometimes people They say, well, if I give the amount of stock I'm supposed to give, I won't have enough for myself. But if a person realizes that parnasa is also an axe in the hands of the woodcutter, Hashem will give us the parnasa we need. We just have to serve Him properly. He won't be stingy in his tzedakah, and he won't overwork and overtax himself to the expense of not davening or learning the amount he should, or spending time with his family, because he's calm. He realizes Hashem's going to take care of me. I just have to do His will. So the Rebbe says that the primary reason, and we're on page 205, that the primary reason that the nations of the world serve the intermediaries is not because they make an error and they maintain that the intermediaries have free choice, while the Jews know the truth and say, no, they're only an axe in the hands of the chopper. No. The Rebbe says the fundamental reason, what's most important for the nations of the world, is that they get stuff. And what's most important for the Jews is serving the king.
The luminaries only work upward, letting the
The sun and the moon, you mean? Well, all vegetative growth. The sun has a major influence there.
About the skies.
Huh?
Sky.
You're talking about the
The
sky?
luminaries in the sky.
ministering angels, and His ministering angels still in the heights of the universe. They're just praising, right? They're not doing any work.
So there are the ministering angels that are praising, and then there are the ministering angels on a lower level that the shefa and bracha comes through them.
We don't ask them.
No, we don't ask them, but they're called in Kabbalah the Shivim Sarim, the 70 ministering angels that the Gentile nations get their influence from. And the Jews get their influence depending on where they live, either through these ministering angels of the countries of the Gentiles, or if the Jews live in Eretz Yisrael, there are no ministering angels that are in charge of Eretz Yisrael. The bracha and the shefa that come into Eretz Yisrael come directly from Hashem. And the Rebbe many times quoted that the pasuk which says about Eretz Yisrael, Ki eine Hashem aleh mereishis shana ad achri shana, that the eyes of Hashem are on Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. Whereas Hashem, the Hashgacha Pratis, is much more direct. And this is very, thank you for bringing that up. The Rebbe is actually going to talk about the 70 ministering angels in a later chapter. We're not going to get to that today, but the same idea applies in what we're talking about right now, which is that the Gentiles serve these intermediaries, or they give authority, or they give a certain measure of deference to these intermediaries, not so much because of an intellectual error, it's because it's through these intermediaries that they're getting the shefa. What does it mean? It means Hashem created the world with two ways. One way is you choose the king. And when you choose the king, you have to have bittul. Bittul, everyone knows what bittul is? You have to nullify your will to his will. That's bittul. Okay, there's levels of bittul, but in a nutshell,
it's like saying to cancel something. In Hebrew, direct translation is to cancel.
Right, you cancel your desires when they're not in sync with a Kodesh Baruch Hu's desires. You have bittul. What did you say?
The ego.
Right. You train your ego that you don't let your ego just pull you around, but you're in charge. Okay? And a Kodesh Baruch Hu, when you want to get from the king, and this is what the clever person wants to get from, so the king gives out in a measured fashion, according to the avodah, according to the service, according to the bittul. But the ministering angels, the governor in the parable, the ministers, the governors, the generals, they don't make such a calculation. And this is, we see what it says in the Zohar on page 207. For to receive influence from these intermediaries, bittul is not required. As the Zohar states, a spirit of impurity is continuously found where there's no cost and there's emptiness. As it is written, Asher nochal b'Mitzrayim chinam, like we ate in Egypt without charge. When the Jewish people were in the desert and they complained, they said they complained that they were able to eat in Egypt. They didn't have to work so hard. They didn't have to make so much effort to serve Hashem to get the blessing. Yes. Had your hand up? Yes.
I read today in the Arush book that the angels have no need for faith because everything is apparent before them. It's laid out before them. Only human beings require.
Right. Right. It's true, because the angels they're not in the body. They don't have
It's apparent.
they don't have a Yetzer Hara.
But if they were leftist angels, they deny the obvious.
So interestingly, when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, he made a prayer. And he said, it's similar to this idea. It's not exactly, but it's similar. He said, every Gentile that comes to this house that he built for Hashem, this house of blessing, like he based tefillah yikari l'kol ha'amin. The Beis HaMikdash is the house of prayer, and we're for all the peoples of the world, right? The windows of the Beis HaMikdash were a tumim shkufim. Not sure if that's the right lashon, but they were narrow on the inside and wide going on the outside, which was the opposite of the way that they built windows in buildings back then. Back then they didn't have electricity, so nowadays it doesn't matter so much. You turn on a light, but back then you needed the sunlight to come in, so you had it wide on the inside, wider on the inside, and narrower on the outside. So the focus of the light would then spread out into the rooms. But in the Beis HaMikdash, since the whole idea of the Beis HaMikdash was to light up the world with Kedusha, right, through Aaron HaKohen lighting the menorah and through the avodas of the korbanos and all the avodas in the Beis HaMikdash, but especially the menorah, it's brought in Chassidus, that the windows therefore were designed in a way that the or would go out to the world, to light up the world. So people, when Shlomo HaMelech made his prayer to Hashem, immediately at the inauguration of the Beis HaMikdash, Bayis Rishon, the first Beis HaMikdash, he said, the Gentiles that come, give them whatever they request. The Jews that come, give them what they deserve. Rashi, take a look over there in Malachim. Rashi over there says, the explanation Rashi gives is that Shlomo Melech understood that if the Gentiles come and they make a request from Hashem and they don't get their tefillahs answered, they made this long schlep from wherever they came to Eretz Yisrael because they heard about Shlomo HaMelech's great name. You know, Shlomo HaMelech's name spread out. The Queen of Sheba came, right? She was very far away. They made this long schlep, and now it's for nothing. They would say, just like our idols are worthless, over here it's also, their God is also worthless. Chas v'shalom. That would be a chilul Hashem. Rashi explains, that's why Shlomo Melech said that whatever the Gentiles ask for, give it to them. It shouldn't be a chilul Hashem. But the Jews will understand if they don't get it, if they don't get the blessing that they requested, they'll understand that it's because of they have to fix up their deeds, right? Like the Gemara says, if someone sees hardships in his life, he should mipashpesh be'masav. He should check his deeds. He should fix him up. He should make his kli, his vessel, a clean vessel, an honest vessel, a straight vessel. He should fix up whatever he has to fix up. So over here, it's a similar idea that the other side, the side of Klipa, Kadosh Baruch Hu set it up in a way that the shefa that he gives to Klipa is a huge amount of shefa, and it's without a cheshbon. It doesn't require bittul. It doesn't require self-nullification, and it doesn't, and it's a huge quantity. So therefore, the Rabbi says that's the reason the Gentiles give deference to these forces in the world. Not that the forces actually have free choice, but it's just because that's the way Hashem set it up. That they understand that, yeah, we don't want to be mevatel ourselves. We want to get, and therefore, if we can get without having to be mevatel ourselves, great. That's what we want. We want to have a good life, right? We want at the end of the day to break open that beer, right, and have that, Miller time or that Budweiser, and then we're really happy, right? Or we get to go on that fishing trip for the weekend. We come back with some trout and we cook them up, and we eat that meat and we put it on the barbecue. We're happy, right? We want shefa. The Gentiles. That's what. And the Jews live. Kodesh Baruch Hu created He created a world, right? He put Bnei Yisrael in the world, and it's a test. It's a challenge for the Jewish people to not assimilate and become like the Gentiles. And the Jewish people can, and we have seen that the Jewish people also can get from this shefa. And not only that, the Rebbe says, first of all, he says it's an influence from the nether side, in other words, the side of Klippa. And then on page 208, the Rebbe says that the sustenance that's drawn down through the stars and constellations is quantitatively greater. And then to explain the nurture received by the nether side, by the Sitra Achra, the side of Klippa, not the side of Kedusha, comes from the Or Makif, and not from the Or Pnimi. And the Or Makif is Lamala Me Ishtalshalus. We learned a little bit about Ishtalshalus. We learned a little about how Hashem set up the world, that He made it Tzimtzum, and He limited His light, limited, until there could be worlds. And He adjusts the light according to the capacity of the world to contain the light. That's called the Or Pnimi. That the Or is mitlabesh in the Kli. The Or fits the vessel like our souls fit our bodies. They're made for each other. Then you have a light that's way beyond. It never had a tzimtzum. It's called the Or Makif. And that's where Klippa gets its sustenance from. The Or Makif. Not the internal aspect of the Or Makif, but the external aspect of the Or Makif. Like the Alter Rebbe says, like someone who throws food to his enemy over his shoulder. He doesn't give it to him like he would give to his friend, looking him in the eyes with a smile. Here, come eat with me. He throws it over his shoulder. And that's a mashal the Alter Rebbe brings. The nimshal is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give man free choice. He wanted that there be a Jewish people that should live amongst the Gentiles, that should live in a world where there's a very powerful Gentile influence. And he wanted these Jewish people to maintain their connection to Him through Torah and mitzvahs, to choose the king, to not choose a Gentile lifestyle, to not assimilate, to remain true to the tenets of Judaism all the time, throughout the generations, to teach it to their children, every generation, to continue. And we're here because of that. We're here because our forefathers did that. Okay, and if a person may think, well, their parents didn't do it so much because they did tshuva, or then their grandparents did, or their great-grandparents did. There was someone back there who had self-sacrifice. All along the way, there were all the generations up to us that had self-sacrifice, that we should be here as Jews. And the ones that didn't have self-sacrifice, they got lost. What happened after the Enlightenment movement came about in Europe, and then the Reform movement came about in Europe? What happened to all those Jews that became members of the Reform movement? Where are they today?
In America.
No, they're gone. They're gone. In America, there was also a Reform movement that sprouted up, and there's many descendants, and today, who knows how many even are Jews, because there's so much intermarriage, and they twisted Torah. I remember sitting in my parents' house, Alam Shalom, and there was a guy there, one of my father's friends, a sweet guy, Herb. I don't have to say his last name, Herbie. My father used to play tennis with him. And he came over one day. And Rahmanis, he had 2 kids, 2 sons. And they both married Gentile women. And none of his grandchildren were Jews. None of his grandchildren were Jews. But because he and many others like him were in such situations, they couldn't bear it in their heart that it would be such a situation that after all these links in the chain, and Judaism was important to him, to some degree at least. It was very important to him that his son, that the girl that his son married would convert, because he knew that his son has to marry a Jewish girl. But so he's not really to blame, because he's a tinok shenishba. He's like a child that was captured by gypsies and raised in a non-Jewish environment. He had no knowledge. Who's to blame is the rabbis. The rabbis that distort the Torah and tell him lies. And tell him, yeah, it's okay. Poof, poof. You're a Jew. It's just a lie. It's just a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
In many of those relationships, it's the non-Jew who keeps up some Jewish traditions.
I remember once speaking to a shaliach in Florida, and a lot of the kids in the Talmud Torah weren't Jewish in the cheder. It was like a gan. I said, how do you do that? He says, look, the fathers are Jewish. They're part of the congregation. Most of the kids are Jews. What can we do? We're going to tell them you can't bring your kids? It's a big problem. You have to ask a rabbi what to do. If you go on shlichus in America, and you have to deal with that problem, you have to get rabbinic advice of how to deal with it. It's not simple. So it is possible for the Jews to also drink from this source, the source of Klippa. But it's not Hashem's will. It's also not Hashem's will that the Gentiles do it. But like we said, with a Gentile, like we said with Shlomo HaMelech, this is a little more lenient. Also the Gentiles, according to certain opinions, the Gentiles are allowed to believe that Hashem gave over delegation, and that they're not allowed to believe that they have free choice, but they help. They're part of the system that Hashem set up. It's called shituf. I can't explain it exactly. It's usher for a Jew. A Jew has to believe that everything is like an axe in the hands of the wood chopper. You don't praise the axe. You don't think the axe is the thing that's giving you the blessing. You don't think the bank manager is your fate is dependent upon him. Your fate is dependent on a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So, but anyway, Hashem structured the world in such a way that Shefa comes through chitzonius hamakifin. And using the Kabbalistic language, the external aspect of this encompassing light, which is much more powerful than the internal light. But the reason Hashem set it up that way is that there should be free choice for the Jews. That's what it means, throwing the meat over your shoulder to give it to your enemy. You really don't want evil. Hashem doesn't want evil in the world. Evil ultimately is going to be banished and destroyed, right? The tichla kol risha ka'ashan, all evil is going to be destroyed. So why did Hashem create it? He doesn't want it, and eventually it's going to be destroyed. Why did he make it? He made it in order to give us free choice. So a Jew, if he wants the easy way out, he could also not choose the king. He could choose to live the life of Gentiles, chas v'shalom. And he also gets from the makif, and he can also get sustenance. And the Rebbe on page 209 says, on this basis, and this is a deeper level of the cleverness of the Jewish people, on this basis we can appreciate the unique positive quality and cleverness of the Jewish people who serve only the Holy One, blessed be He. To receive sustenance from the realm of holiness, you have to have bittul, you have to have avodah, service, and you have to have labor, you have to have efforts. That's all required to make oneself a fit medium to receive that sustenance. And in addition to that, the blessings are measured, meted out in a manner commensurate with the divine service performed. So therefore, it's harder to get, and you have to work harder, and Hashem is going to be more exacting with us. But that's called choosing the king, and that's cleverness, because the Jewish people are choosing Hashem over the klipa. That's the cleverness of it. They can get more shefa through attaching to klipa, but they prefer to not attach to klipa. They prefer to attach to Hashem, even though it might be that they'll get less sustenance, and the amount that they do get is going to be harder for them to get, because they have to serve Hashem. Because in the realm of klipa, like the Zohar brought, it's given out free, and the Rebbe says, and this is powerful, okay, on 210, and it says not only that, he says, for even the Jewish people can temporarily receive influence from the nether side. Right, temporarily, because again, when Mashiach comes and when everything is going to be revealed and all the evil is going to be destroyed, there won't be influence from the side of Klipa. Klipa is going to be destroyed, but temporarily, right now, before Mashiach is revealed, before that revelation occurs, even the Jewish people can receive influence from the side of the Klipa. And the Rebbe says, "V'lo ol." Not only that, elagam. Indeed, when doing so, Hem notlim chelik barov. They receive the first and choicest portion. Nevertheless, the clever ones are willing to forgo all this, because they cherish the limited influence that they receive from the realm of holiness more. They want the king. They don't want klipa. We don't want klipa. We want the king. That's a cleverness. So, someone who's steeped in passions of this world and pleasures of this world might say, "Hey, that doesn't sound clever to me. I want a yacht. I want a private plane. I want a mansion here and a mansion there, and everyone should have a swimming pool, and the one in the north should have an indoor swimming pool that's heated. I want. Okay, they might get, but if they get it and they're living a Gentile life, they're then getting their nourishment through klipa. And klipa gives them the first portion. They get from the first portion. Hashem set it up. That klipa is giving them. Hashem set it up that they're getting it through the klipa, the finest portion. Why? So that Rabbi Dessler, you ever heard of Eliyahu Dessler from Gateshead, London, Gateshead, England? You heard of Gateshead? There's a famous girls' seminary there. Maybe there's also a yeshiva there. Yes. But Rabbi Dessler himself was very connected to the teachings of Hasidus, and he had a relationship with the previous Rebbe. And the real litvakers, like you say, the ones that are misnagdim, it's mutter to be a litvak. One of my friends from Beitar, NACHLAOT Kirshner, told me it's mutter to be a litvak. It's asar to be a misnagid. Misnagid. Be a litvak. Have your customs. Have your manner of dress. Have your ways. Right? We love all Jews.
What was the Vidnaglan?
What?
What was the Vidnaglan? To the misnagid.
He was influenced in a bad manner. Anyhow, today there aren't too many misnagdim. The real misnagdim, there aren't too many.
Oh yes.
There are some, they're very few. There aren't too many misnagdim. Baruch Hashem, the Hasidus is spread out. You can go to any Litvish yeshiva and you can hear the Divrei Torah of the Rabbanim are peppered with ideas from Hasidus. It really has. The that the Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, I'm going to come when your well springs when the well springs of Hasidus are spread forth. They're spread forth, and they're.
What was the Rabbi Shas?
We're going to keep politics out of this year. I didn't say there's no misnagdim. I just said there aren't that many. These days, I'll tell you two stories. One story is what I'm about to tell you about Rav Dessler. Remind me of the story of Rav Dessler. I forgot the other story, so I'll just tell you what Rav Dessler. Rav Dessler wrote a series of books called Michtav Me'Eliyahu. You have them. Beautiful, wonderful books. And you can see in the footnotes, Tanya, you can see, he learned Hasidus. He was connected to the Friedrich Rebbe. So he was a wonderful, wonderful person, a wonderful rabbi. He was a great teacher of Torah. He was a great teacher of Torah. The real Misnagdim won't have his books because of that. The real Misnagdim. But you'll find his books all over all yeshivas because he was a great Torah teacher. So he writes over there a very interesting parable, a very interesting metaphor. He calls it a showcase. Showcase. When you go by a store, right? So let's say you're looking for some shoes. So you go by a shoe store, there's a window, a showcase window. And they put in the showcase window the best shoes, the nicest shoes, the ones that are going to attract you to come into the store. If you go at any stores like that, you go by a toy store, they put the best toys, right? Every store is like that because they want to attract you to come in and buy their wares.
Not in Israel.
Also in Israel. Maybe not as much as other countries. Yeah, but sure. It's called in Israel a chalon rava, a showcase window.
It's called.
Okay. So Rabbi Dessler said, Hashem set up a showcase window because if it would be that everyone who, whatever they did on Aveira, boom, a lightning bolt would come down and zap them, right? They wouldn't do, what kind of free choice would there be?
Shmuel said that.
Maybe he brought it from Shmuel. I don't know. He brings it in Michtav Me'Eliyahu. So Hashem creates a showcase. Who does he put in the showcase? He puts evil people that are very successful. They're in the showcase. And they're in the showcase in order to give us free choice. Because if the evil people were all poor and cursed and ill, no one would be attracted to that type of lifestyle. And if all the tzaddikim were wealthy and healthy and lived astoundingly long lives and had bracha in all areas, so that would also tilt the balance of free choice. Hashem wants to keep the balance of free choice, that each and every person can have a choice and really make that choice. How am I going to live my life? So Rav Dessler says that's Hashem set up in order there should be free choice, a showcase for the evildoers to be able to present their merchandise. Thank you. Their merchandise. Say, come in to my store, you'll get a lot. So we have the choice, and this is part of the wisdom. This is part of the cleverness of the person who chooses the king. That person is the Jewish people. We forego all that shefa. If that shefa is going to come from Klippa, we don't want it. There's like two straws you could draw down from, right? And it all depends on what you're doing at the time. Like the Alter Rebbe says, even if a person is usually he's a tzaddik. In the way we talk about a person who's a tzaddik, not in the Alter Rebbe's way that he has no yetzer, but he's a tzaddik. He acts righteously, right? So, but if at any moment he does things not in a righteous manner, he does it. Let's say he even if he eats kosher food, but he eats it with a lust, so he's drawing down from his sustenance at that time from the klipa, and the clever person says, I always want to draw my sustenance down from the king. That's the cleverness of the Jewish people. And we'll continue Bezrat Hashem next week. So we're on page 210. We got to the end of page 210.